Today's message is Holy Promotion. And it comes from the book of Daniel, and I don't know if you guys all read it, but book of Daniel has really touched my heart. When I was working, when I was just out of high school, out of college, and I just got my job with the county. And when I was working for the county, all of a sudden I said, what should I do here? Just making money and going to work every single day. And I started to try to really focus on other things, which was to move up, get promotion. Many times I speak to you guys here saying, "Are you good? Get promoted, become a supervisor or things like that. Get more money, get more benefit." I say those kinds of things to you, but the way to get to that location, get to that point where God is ready to bless you to get to, there are many different ways to get there. And when I read the book of Daniel, it tells me that your ways or our world ways is so different than godly ways of promotion. And God wants all of us to be blessed. He wants all of us to have a great benefits. He wants all of us to get a good paycheck. He wants all of us to get promoted into different positions. He wants to bless you guys. But to get to that point of where God is blessing you, where God is trying to take you to, is the choice becomes in each one of us here how to get there. And through the book of Daniel, I was told and I was taught it's very, very different. As you can see it here, Daniel, when he was a child, when he was a teenager, the King Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon came over to Israel and took away lots of people back to their own country. And one of the people that they took was Daniel. And Daniel was chosen because he was a very talented young boy, and they could use him for their own government, for their own operation. So they kidnapped Daniel from Israel to Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. And while he was there, he tried to train him to become one of them. But Daniel refused. And through his whole life, until the elderly age of 80 or 90 years old, what we found here in the book of Daniel is that he never gives up his faith. But then also at the same time, not through the worldly ways, not through the ways of people are telling him to get promoted, he follows God's ways. And through four different kings and 2 different nations, he was constantly getting promoted to a position that is amazing, a position that is a second highest under the king. And as you can see here in Daniel 2:4-8, he gets promoted by King Nebuchadnezzar like this. That the king promoted and he made him a ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel 5:29, he gets promoted again. The Belshazzar gave the command and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. Daniel 6:28, again from different king, from under different nation, because Babylon got taken over. It says this, so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So wherever he goes, under whoever he's under control with, he was always getting promoted, he was always getting prosper. And clearly remember this, he was not one of their people. He was a Jewish, he was an Israelite, he was an outsider, and yet he was constantly being recognized, he was constantly being promoted to very high positions. And it's so unthinkable, so hard to do. I remember when it was a very rare thing that an Asian short guys becomes army officers. When I first got hired, in 1984, I graduated from high school and went into the military, ROTC and everything else. And I finally got my commission in 1988 as a second lieutenant. I went right into the Army National Guard. And to them, it was very rare at that time, okay? Now it's not the same situation now, but at that time, it was very rare to have a first generation, okay, I was 1.5, I was still very first generation, Asian person coming into the military background. I was not only as an enlisted, but as an officer. Very rare thing. When I was going to the program for the ROTC, it was very rare to have any Asians in that environment. And to compete in that environment, I had to really prove myself, and they would challenge. If someone else did one thing. I had to do 10 times more to prove and convince them that I can do better and I'm as good as anybody else. And it was the same situation. So I made it through the program, and many Asians was not able to do this. And in fact, there was 5 Korean guys that was there, and I was the only one that made it through. And it wasn't because they were less than anybody else. It was just that there was a cultural issues involved. There was doubtful issues involved. There was confusions involved. So they just dropped out. And I was one of those persons that made it through. And I'm thinking, I made it through. I finally got it. I finally got my rank. And then when I was going to the Army National Guard as a lieutenant, and I was put on the side where I was really hard to be accepted by the higher up. It took about 3 to 4 years finally for them to recognize to give me different position, because I guess they got tired of seeing me out of one position for too long. So I understand it was very difficult to promote if especially you're the outsider. Well, Daniel was that person. He was not part of the people of those nations, and yet he was able to promote and get ahead. It's a completely difficult thing, especially he's a captured, he was a captured nation person. And he's a person who has no family. He was different looking. He had different culture, and yet he was able to promote and be accepted to be where he was at in his position. Okay, so I understand the racism, the prejudice that people have towards a certain group of people prevents people from getting ahead, and that's been an issue in many organizations. In fact, you guys are in an environment that's much better civil, very more organized now than a long time ago. And in fact, a lot of times I'm so thankful that I came to America in 1970, and the civil rights and all those kind of things. I was kind of glad of that, because I sensed the tension and racism or the people's prejudice that's involved with people that are outside coming in. Okay. But in your cases, there are much more better structures. So the one thing that I tell Monica and Madeline all the time is, don't ever say that you didn't get somewhere because you were Asian. Okay, you try hard, and we work hard to get wherever you got to go. Don't ever give up, but don't ever say to yourself that because who you are, you didn't make it there. Okay, you got to work harder. But Daniel was that person. So you can clearly see that it was almost impossible thing for someone who is outside of their own culture to get ahead. Well, but he did. He did get promoted. He did get recognized for who he was. And I'm sure with the same quality of characters and intelligence level and talent that they might have, sometimes you don't get recognized because what you look like. But it did not happen to Daniel. So how did he do it? How does it all work out? So when I came out from the college and started working for the county, that was my biggest concern, And so what I did was I followed the worldly ways. Okay, I should have followed the Bible way, but once I found that it didn't work too well, I followed the Bible way. But in the beginning, when I first got out of college and started working, I followed how to get promoted, but by the standard of the worldly system. So I try to be good to my supervisor, try to be, the word they would use, the kissing up to your supervisor, right? And trying to look good, trying to be recognized, trying to promote yourself. And I felt that, that was something I can do to advance in my career. And in the end, it turned out to be a total disaster. It was a horrible experience I have ever gone through after the first 5 years in the department. There were times Monica asked me, well, why haven't you done anything more? Why didn't you, why were you just a deputy the whole time? Well, this was the reason. I tried it and it was this horrible experience I went through. And when it didn't work out, I went and followed the gospel way. And that's when I discovered the book of Daniel. But what is the worldly way that tells you and me how to promote, how to advance in our society? And basically it says this, it's mainly focusing on yourself. Okay, you only. That's the worldly way, isn't it? How to promote yourself into the world, to let people know what a great guy you are, a great lady you are, to say, look, recognize me, point me out, to say that I am better than anybody else. That's how a lot of times people think. Well, basically it says this is some of the items that I found out. There were many other items. There were many points that people tells us how to advance, how to promote, how to be recognized. But this isn't some of the ideas. It says this: identify your goal. This is build a professional resume. Beware of your strength. Take full responsibility. Raise your standard. Brand yourself. Okay, brand yourself. Like here I am. And I like the last one here. Network a lot. Okay, network a lot. That's what he says. You do social media and all that stuff to really be noticed by the people that are around you. And this is basically, you look at this. This is like you have to put a lot of effort into this. You have to put a lot of work into this. You don't want to. You try to. I've seen some of the people that in my work area when I was working. There were friends that I know who tried to become a sergeant and lieutenant, trying to advance, because each rank that you go higher, you make $1,000 more paycheck. It's like, that's a lot of money, right? And they were really pursuing. I remember one friend of mine who worked so hard, and he was studying for the exam to get promoted, to be recognized by a supervisor. But 5 years later, he did get the job, was a promotion, he got promoted. But 5 years later, I was shocked to see how he changed. First of all, his character changed. He was not the same person that I knew before. Second of all, his hair changed. From the black hair, he turned all gray. I was like, whoa, that is so much gray. And he had his rank on his face. I mean, and constantly what I saw him was just always under stress, always never calm, always, worrying about things. I go, wow. I said, I don't want to do that. So when you're looking at the worldly promotion, it can be very stressful, and it can be very demanding, and it can take away. A lot of times you see also people that are losing their family, their health problem occurs. Many bad things can happen when you aren't really following the worldly promotion, because you already are focusing on yourself, and there's a lot of pressure involved in this type of lifestyle. Network a lot, okay? Brand yourself. Identify your goal. This is. It doesn't come very naturally. It is a hard work. I'm really amazed with how the politicians do this. I mean, when you hear them talking, when they argue about their positions, it's amazing. They are constantly talking what a great guy I am, what a great lady I am, and they're always saying me this, me that, right? I did that a lot with my own family. I said me. I did it, and I hope they take it as a joke. But I try not to say it. But that's how the worldly point of view is. The worldly point of view is this, me only type of setting. Me, right? Well, like I said, when you are following the worldly patterns in anything that you do, in your career, in your home, in the church environment, it can be very demanding environment. And you know what else? God is not pleased with that type of lifestyle. God is definitely not. He's like saying, I don't have faith in the Lord. I don't believe in the way the Bible tells me. I'm going to do it my own way because this will work. I also remember my younger brother did the same thing. He worked very, very hard to become rich. He worked very, very hard to be recognized for the business that he was operating. And all of a sudden he was 5 years younger than me, but he definitely looked older than me by the time when we got into the regular age. He was just always under high stress. So the godly way, and there's a worldly way, and there's definitely Bible tells us. It clearly gives us a proof that when you follow the worldly ways, it can become a very, very bad thing for you. You could lose a lot of good things that you already have. I've seen so many people, especially, losing their own family because they follow the worldly ways. And also their health becomes an issue. And that's what Bible tells us. Well, what is it that God's way? And this will be difficult for all of us to follow. But you know what? For me, when after 5 years of buying people good things, trying to kiss up to my supervisor, trying to be recognized for what I'm doing. Once I realized that it wasn't working, in fact, things were getting worse because I also found that when you follow the worldly ways, you know what also happens? You create a lot of enemies around you because people get jealous. People, they get jealous and they go, man, that guy's trying so hard. Because for me, after 5 years in the department, my goal was this. that I was going to be the youngest supervisor they ever had. Because I was 22 when I got hired, because most of the officers are usually 26, 27 years old, because they have to go through they have to do a lot of things to get there. But I got hired at 22. So by the time I said to 20, I mean by 5 years later, 27, I will be the youngest supervisor they ever had, and be the first Korean ever they would have. That was my goal. And in during that whole time, man, I had a lot of enemies. People are mad at you, they don't trust you, there were a lot of backstabbing going on. It was a horrible life. At the same time, I said, man, this is not working out. I was miserable, I was unhappy. So what I did, when I finally realized that I need to humble myself and see what's going on, and this is when I discovered the book of Daniel. And I read the Bible, and I read the book of Daniel. It tells me there is the worldly way and there's godly way. What is godly way? This will be very different for you, but you know what? The godly way doesn't make sense, but it will bring good things in your life. It brings positive things in your life. It brings peace into your heart. It brings comfort into your life. Many, many good things will come out of the godly way. Especially, you will not have so many enemies if you're following God's way. Clearly, man, I had a lot of enemies when I was following the worldly way to promote. It was horrible. Well, godly way through what Daniel did was this. From the beginning, when he was taken away from his home to another country, imagine how scary that is. That you are taken away from your own home, from all your family, because of what you can do. Okay? And when he was taken away in this completely secular world, non-Christian environment, from the beginning he said to himself, I am a Christian. I am a follower of my God, and I will never lose that passion for the Lord. Wherever you go, you have to make a stand and say, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ no matter what everybody does. I don't care. I'm going to stay straight. I'm going to follow God. I'm not going to worry about anybody else around me. I'm only going to please my God only. I don't care if they go out and drink. I don't care if they do drugs. I don't care if they do all the crazy nasty things and lie and cheat and backstabbing. I'm going to stay my focus on the Lord. And that's what Daniel did. He had his life on the line for not following what they told him to do. But he says, I don't care. I'm going to follow the Lord. When you're following the Lord, no matter what happens all around you, God will take care of you and protect you. And literally, this is what happened to me too. After 5 years of my attempt trying to follow the worldly ways to promote, when that did not work, I started to follow God completely in 100% complete changes in my life, and I started to focus on the Lord, and no matter what anybody else did, because a lot of guys, okay, they like to go drinking, they like to go chasing women, all right, they want to do all that kind of stuff. I said, no way, I'm going to stay focused on the Lord. I started to read the Bible whenever I can. I preach, I went and served anyone that I can during my whole time of my career. And that's what God is asking for all of us to do. That you have to have a purpose in your life, which means that you have to know who you are, and that's how God will bless you. God will care for you. He will take you to the place where you never imagined you would ever go to. As He says here in Daniel chapter 1, verse 1 through 1, verse 8. Chapter 1, verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested the chief of eunuchs that he might not defile himself. It was a food that was given to Daniel. He said, I'm not going to eat any of this food. I'm going to keep my faith. I'm going to stay pure. That must have been hard to do for a young man to say, I'm not going to eat this delicious food that was given to me. He kept his faith. Number 2 that he did was he was always faithful and he was blameless. No one could come after him because of his faithfulness of what he was doing. So when you're working, okay, this is the way God's promotion works. When you're working, you're not working for your supervisor. You're working for the Lord. Okay? And whatever you're doing your job, when nobody else wants to do anything, nobody wants to do certain tasks, you take your position and say, you know what, I'm going to be faithful to my work. Especially when my supervisor is not watching me, I'm going to do my job. And that's something that I have done in my career too. There were positions, there were things that we had to do that nobody wants to do, especially searching homeless men. They smell horrible, they are dirty, they're germy people, and nobody wants to pat down or search those people. But yet, that's what I have to do. And I, regardless if my supervisor is watching me or not, I did something that nobody else wants to do because I am working for the Lord. There's a task that is involved with nobody. When the supervisor is not around, he would just lay there, it would just stay there, it would just be left on the side until a supervisor comes. I just took my own initiative and I did. You know what I found out? Somehow the supervisor knows that I did it. He somehow knows. I don't know how that happens. He wasn't there, but he just sensed that I did that work. Later on in my career, people start to trust you more. They know that when Yoon Hee is in that environment, things will get done. That's how I got to be known in my work environment, because they know that I will be faithful to my job. God will honor you for the work that you do. When you're doing it, not for the people, but for the Lord. As it says here in Daniel chapter 6, verse 4. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charges against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge of fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault around in him. They couldn't come out attacking him because he was a faithful person. There was no, there will be a time when you have 10 people working in that environment, okay? And something happens. They might say, 9 of them all probably made a mistake. But when they see Ernest there, no, he would not have done that. You were protected when bad things happen. When I was at work, we did like 20 to 30 releases of prisoners, and there's a big cases of paperwork that you have to go through to release one prisoner. There was one time that I made a mistake. I released this guy by mistake. Okay, I released him, and it's a big issue. When you work for the sheriff department and to release someone by mistake. I just kind of missed that one number out of all the stack that was there. I just missed that one number and released the guy by mistake, right? And I said, oh no, I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna get fired. Something bad's gonna happen to me, and I just feel so horrible. Well, in the end, everyone, okay, my supervisor calls me in, thinking that I'm in big trouble now. They do some major investigation, that kind of stuff. And I wasn't one of those investigative person. I was like, man, this is the first time in 20 years this had happened to me. And that's what they did. 20 years you've been down there releasing people, and this is your first time you ever got a mistake on. So because this is the first time after 20 years, we're going to let you go. We're just going to write a note here, okay? After 1 year later, it just disappears. That's what we're going to do. I said, wow. So I walked away with nothing happening because 20 years of my record tells me this was the first time in my 20 years. Out of 20 to 30 releases that I did every single day. So when people see you, when you're being faithful, not only when your supervisor is watching you, but when you're faithful to your own work, when nobody's watching you, somehow they recognize your performance. Okay? So Daniel was that person, regardless who watched him, what anybody said. Okay, he was faithful to his job. And imagine this, he was, let's say, like top-notch person in this government. He didn't have to be faithful. It wasn't his country. It wasn't his nation. It wasn't his people, right? And yet, he worked very hard. He was faithful to his own job that did not benefit him in no way. In fact, they were the enemies of Israel, right? And yet, he was faithful to his job. God is asking each one of you to do the same thing. You be faithful because He will protect you in the future. It may seem like a burden on you all the time because you're like, I'm the only one who's doing this. That may be said to yourself, but in the end, people will recognize and saying, you know what, that person is faithful to all that work he has done in the past. I don't think, whatever happens now, we can overlook. We can see it as just a one tiny mistake. And that can be said the same thing about your own relationship too. With your wife and your husband relationship, the same thing. If you're being faithful to what you're doing, people will see it as, hey, you know what? This is one tiny mistake, and they cannot come after you at all. As you try to do it happen here. Daniel had a lot of enemies around him because of his position and jealousy and people's greediness that they have around him. He had a lot of enemies, but they could not go after him because he was always faithful to his work. So be faithful to your job. And this is the way God promotes people. Third thing that he always did was he prayed. No matter what happened, no matter what accusation he received, no matter how he was betrayed, he prayed. Daniel 6:10, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, which was to kill Daniel because Daniel didn't bow to their God, right? He saw that it was signed and it was an accusation directly only to Daniel because of the enemies that he had, because the position that he was in. Even that was done, he still prayed. He went home, and in his upper room with his window open toward Jerusalem, he would kneel down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was custom since early days. The way our custom works, when you've been accused falsely, what do? They file a lawsuit, right? They go look for an attorney and try to file a lawsuit for the wrong behavior that was put up on them, for the feelings that got hurt. Okay, or they make big complaints. The God's promotion is that you go down on your knees and start praying. Okay, and not make a complaint. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows is something that's happening is not the right thing to happen. But what God is expecting you to do is that you go down on your knees and pray. And you know what? People will soon recognize you have done anything wrong. If you are especially accused falsely. Number 4, what Daniel did was this, that he served God continually. It's not that he said, I serve God continually. He was a secular person, king. After he saw the miracle, what was going to happen to Daniel, he says, serve God continually like you always have done. Does people see you as a person that served God continually? As he says here in Daniel 6:16. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, your God whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. People know. There were times in during that 5 years of my worldly promotional method. In the end, I was like, finally after 5 years later, my supervisor, he was getting, he and I had a little bad situation because of my ambition, right? And he even told me, he says, you know what, somehow you get away with a lot of things. It's like someone's watching over you. And after 50 years of in my wrongful behavior, I realized at that moment, it is the Lord. It's God who's watching over me. God is doing the same thing for all of you here. Number 5, innocent before God and to people. Okay, people need to see that you are very, very innocent. Daniel 6:22 says this, my God has sent his angels, shut the lion's mouth, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent. I didn't even have a screen there, huh? Okay. Number 5, he says this, my God has sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, King, I have done no wrong before you. God will send angels in your environment, so you don't need to be afraid. And seriously, in my time too, there were times that I thought I was going to get fired. I really did. And somehow, at that moment, see, this is again my 5th year of my selfish promotional time. After 5th year, I realized that it wasn't working, that my way was not working, the world promotion was not working. I surrendered to the Lord. I said, Lord God, the job that you gave me was because you gave it to me. It wasn't that I did such a great hard work, that I was so talented that I received this position. Lord, it is you who gave it to me. I surrendered to the Lord. And right at that moment, I had this humongous attack, because I was no longer fighting against all my enemies. I just let it down. Okay, go ahead and accuse me. Go ahead and come and attack. Go ahead and try to fire me. And because why did I do that was because I was trying to protect myself. And once I realized that it wasn't working, and then I also realized that it was God who gave me all these good things in my life, I gave it back to the Lord. Lord, if you want to get fired, it is in your hand. And as soon as that happened, okay, I saw God protecting me. God was watching over me, helping me what I need to do. And finally, after my 5th year, I left my position, the ambitious position that I was in, and I went back to core service and started serving the Lord. Okay, I started going back to church, started to receive the Lord, and started to find out God's promotion. And when I read this, when I read God's promotion, I found myself in a completely different phase of my life. Okay, biggest thing that happened was I found peace. And God restored me. God restored me with my work again. I didn't get fired. In fact, I stayed on my job and ended up being in a position working Monday through Friday. I used to go to work at 5:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. Very convenient life. That's how I lived throughout my life. And God promoted me in a different way. But if God wants to take you up to heaven, God wants to take you up to the higher rank and higher positions, keep it in mind, you have the worldly way and there's godly way. What we just talked about here today, what Daniel did was godly promotion. Yes, it is hard. It sounds impossible because it's basically saying be faithful to your work, stay quiet, okay? Don't overreact, don't try to be recognized, don't try to promote yourself. It sounds so impossible to do that. How do I get promoted and how do I get recognized? How do I be noticed by the people if I don't do any networking? Right? It's so impossible, but God tells us that there's a godly promotion and there's a worldly promotion. It is hard, once again, it's so hard. So hard not to be recognized by following God's way. So God tells us this. Okay? That God can promote you. Isaiah 55:8-9 says, His ways are very different than your ways. He said, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So whatever we think that how we should get there, God's saying, I have a better way for you. Okay? In fact, I am thanking God so much right now that I didn't get promoted because I didn't need to get promoted. It was just my personal ambition. You know, my health would have gotten worse. I would have definitely probably lost my family. Definitely my hair would have turned gray. It's turning gray now, but definitely I would have gotten much more grayer. So, He tells us, follow God's ways. Number 2, what does it say? Show us great and mighty things. God tells us that He will show you great things that you do not know. Call to me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. In Jeremiah 33:3. He says, God also says, He could help you. Jeremiah 32:27. I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Nothing is too hard for me. He says, nothing is too hard for me. If God is intended for you to get promoted, to get that raise, He said He will give it to you. The only time that you doubt that is because when you don't believe in it, that God can do greater things in His own way. And then in verse 75:6-7, I was real surprised to find this one verse. It says, For promotion come neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He put down one and set up another. I truly believe in this, that God is the one who raises people up, and that God is the one who brings people down. He definitely prevented from me happening from promotion in my life because He said you're doing it the wrong way, and plus He says you don't need it. You don't need it. It's not going to be good for you. But if you wanted me to promote it, He said I can do greater things than you could ever imagine. Seriously, in my work too also, without even trying for it, trying to be promote myself to get ahead in the department, eventually I started to get pay raise. Things that I never thought I would get pay raise from. They changed the rules for me so that I could get pay raise. They changed the rules for me so that I could get overtime. And then they changed the rules again after my 15 or 16 years in the department that you start getting pay raise after 20 years, like 4%, 25 years, like another 5%. It was like constant raise was coming in. I was like, wow, I don't need it to be a supervisor or trying to promote myself. God can do things in your life right now that is totally amazing. What He wants all of us to do is that you remember that God is the one who raises and who brings people down. What you guys have here in this life right now, your family, your home, your job, God says, I gave that to you. It was very critical for me to understand this. Here I am at the age of 22, college graduate. Here's the first Asian ever to become a marshal and a very rare person to become a lieutenant. I thought I was like, it was me. At 22, I was like, it was me who did it. God really taught me in a very powerful way after 5 years. When I almost lost my job, started having all these enemies, started having problems with military also too. It was horrible. It was horrible trying to promote myself. Then I realized, man, I need to stop this. I need to realize it was God who gave it to me. It wasn't that I had to do on anything. It was God who led me and He made me. He helped me and gave me the wisdom to get to where I need to go in my life. So it is God who promotes. How that could be done? God is in you and with you forever. 2 Corinthians 13:5, remember this, that Jesus is in you? Or do you not realize about yourself that Jesus Christ is in you? Hebrews 13:5, it says, God is with you. Let your manner of living be without covetousness, and content with such things as you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So even though you follow God's ways instead of the worldly ways, remember what we just talked about here today. Remember the promise that he gives to each one of us here. And in the end, like we talked about it earlier, you follow the worldly ways. That's your choice. But with all the crises and all the things that you have to go through, constant living in fear or worries, you follow God's promotion, okay, you find completely different phase of life. That's what I discovered. After 5 years of my attempt to promote myself, when I turned over to the Lord and read the book of Daniel, realized that there's God's promotion I tried to follow. I found myself at peace. I was no longer worried about promotion. I was no longer worried about the pay raise, the positions. God just gave it to me. Seriously, like that position I told you that I worked Monday to Friday, working 5:30 a.m. to 1:30 shift. I never asked for it. That was a position that everybody was trying to get into. But that position, they just came to me and asked me. And look, in the time it was so perfect because at that moment we bought a house in Corona. And from Corona to go to the LA was just really hard to do on a regular shift. But God just offered that to me. And it was so much easier to go from 4:30 in the morning. I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the LA. But it was doable. Because I didn't run into any traffic. And at the same time, going home was the same thing. I got up at 1 o'clock. They left you out at 1 o'clock, even though it was 1:30 shift. At 1 o'clock, there was hardly any traffic. And God gave that to me. Okay? And it's amazing. And that is a complete miracle because people were asking the sergeant and saying this, Sarge, why did Yoon Hee get that spot? He didn't even put in for it. And you know what the sergeant told everybody? He earned it. He earned that spot. And that was the end of it. I bypassed everybody else to get to that position. I think about it even now, but that wasn't part of my example thought process. It just came to me right now to realize how God has really blessed me also. Because I followed God's promotion. I didn't become a sergeant in a higher ranking position, but God promoted me in a different way. God can do the same thing for all of you here. Like we talked about earlier, when you follow God's promotion, this is one thing that you will definitely gain. Peace. You have peace in your heart. Okay? Because you're not going over trying to find out why did that person get promoted or got a pay raise and why didn't I get it? And you're eager or you're fighting over that. Like what that person do? Maybe that person knew the supervisor better, or maybe give him a better Christmas present or something, or birthday present or something. You become like jealous, right? You get jealous over someone else doing better. But when you have God's promotion in you, you follow God's ways, you have that peace. So what? God's gonna take care of me. When you follow God's promotion, you'd be saying sometimes you'd be saying also the same thing like, does anybody recognize what I'm doing here? You know what? God recognizes what you're doing here. And they may not see it at that moment. Isn't it a lot of times when you perform, people recognize you more, but they're not saying it, but they do recognize and respect you for that? Does that happen a lot? John 16:33. Keep it in mind. God said he will give you peace. Why? Because he has overcome the world.
Amen.
John 16:33 says this, I have told you this thing so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. God is saying he is in control of everything in this world. Okay? Even your promotions, your pay raise, your recognition, all of that stuff. He has overcome, but he's asking all of us to follow God's promotion. Sincerely for me, on my 5th year in the department, after my attempt of worldly promotion, I was so humble. I went back to church and I sat down in a church, and the pastor was going over the book of Daniel, and he talked about something like this. That God is the one who promotes people. He talked about being humble and recognize that he's the one who will take you where you need to go in your life. I was like near tears. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry like Hannah does. I couldn't cry. It was just like, it touched my heart so powerfully. And he said, you know what? I don't need to do anything. Just trust in the Lord, follow God's ways, and He will bring everything back together for me. And literally my life is that example. You know, pay raise stuff. Seriously, when even also one more thing that I'd like to share with you is this. A great miracle. When I left the Army National Guard, I was making at the time $400 a month. Okay? And I left only to serve God, because I was teaching Bible at a Korean church for young high school kids. And it was becoming a hassle to them, because every once a month I had to go to the National Guard. They had to find a replacement. It was really hard for me to do this. So when I finally came to my 6-year commitment with the National Guard, I had to make the decision to stay on or to quit. And one of the reasons that I decided to quit was to serve the Lord, even though I'm going to lose my $400. Greedy person that I am, okay? I'm going to say, you know what, Lord, forget the $400, I'm going to serve you. And when that happened, a month later, okay, in an amazing way, the county gave me $400 raise. Okay, something I don't want to go into detail how that happened, what does it all consist of, but they changed the policy just so that I get that $400 pay raise. I was like, no way, that doesn't happen in a county work environment. But I saw how God working in this, that He turned the whole world around just for me. And I'm the only one that received that $400 pay raise. And God can do the same thing for all of you here. When I saw that happening, I said, wow, God is definitely in charge of everything in our life. It is the Lord who gave me everything. It is the Lord who promotes me to go anywhere. It is the Lord who takes things away at the same time too. And I certainly do not want to be taken away to try and teach me anything. I definitely will stay humble. I will definitely follow God's ways and believing in Him and trusting in Him. Biggest part is having that peace in your heart, right? Keep it in mind, John 16:33. You have peace, knowing this, that God has overcome the world. He is in complete charge of everything in your life.
Amen.
Let's all pray.